there is one critique I will have about some of the content that's in the game.
Actually,
Freaking Furnace.
Kevin, let me stop here because I actually really need to go to the bathroom. Can you hold that thought about Furnace Fun?
Yeah.
You'll probably hear the bathroom noises. You can enjoy that.
Maybe
that'll be our intro.
Please don't. Please don't. Oh, God.
Bet.
No. Hello, and welcome to the Interstate Gamers Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin, a.k.a. K-Slugs.
My name is Peter, a.k.a. Deal For Real, and I'm also your host.
So, as you guys know, as our avid followers of the IG podcast know, we rate and discuss some of our favorite video games, and we kind of like to spark conversations and fun discussions about them and get even a little bit critical about them. So, yeah.
I was talking about podcasts with some friends of mine over the weekend, and somebody, not me, started the conversation of, what are your top 3 favorite podcasts? And I was pretty modest. I kept IG at number 3 on my list.
What?
I mean, you know, everything I do is for the people, and the people don't always want to hear about how I love my podcast with Kevin, but still had to educate them, you know, still had to spread the word. And actually, some of them seemed pretty down, so we might have a few new listeners from the Denver metro area, which would be exciting.
Well, cool. Well, first, let's get into our beer segment, which might be a pretty disappointing beer segment on my end because it's not even beer at all. I actually don't have beer. I have Pepsi, trying to take it easy on the beer for a while. But, you know, it's a pretty good Pepsi, I gotta say.
Is it just normal garden variety Pepsi?
Yeah, it's actually bottom of the barrel-aged Pepsi from about a week and a half ago.
Enticing.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you have this Pepsi because the beer that I have is not a particularly striking beer, I wouldn't say. However, it is good. It is a Heileman's old-style lager. Classic lager, actually. Can't forget that. But this is from a Wisconsin brewery, Heileman's Brewing. And it's just kind of a plain-ass lager. It's actually one of my boss's favorite beers. He keeps a lot of them at work, so I managed to sneak one home. Don't tell anybody.
Ooh.
But this is my first time having it, and it's pretty good. It's just a good lager. Tastes very much like wheat, if I may.
Wheat.
Yeah, that's really all there is to it. No story.
Cool.
No crazy flavor profiles. Nothing. Just good old beer.
A very moderate beer segment from the IG cast.
Yeah, we're losing our touch.
We are. Can I ask you a question, though? How do you feel about stouts? Have you ever...
Yeah, I've had a few in my day. I'm not the biggest fan of stouts, but I will drink them. I won't say no to one.
Right. Yeah, our boy Z-Link, or Chris, has been getting me into stouts lately. It's grown on me. I don't think it'll ever become my top favorite, but I had one this weekend, and yeah, it was pretty good. It's pretty good, I'd say. So we'll just count that as my beer, the beer that I drank over the weekend. So
yeah, I've actually had a stout on the show before, to be honest.
You have
several episodes ago. So only the most avid of fans will probably remember,
or fact checkers,
or the fact checkers.
All right, well, cool. Well, Peter, I believe we have a very, very ridiculously special game in store for our audience today.
Oh my lordy. Yeah, as you sometimes phrase it, I would call this a classic of classics. This is a game that has a very, very, very special place in K-Slugs' heart, and also mine by extension. And you know what? I'm not gonna spend a million years prefacing it. I'm just gonna say this game for the N64, it's Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, finally we're at this episode. I've been awaiting this episode. I've waited for this moment. My body is ready.
Kevin's been writing Banjo-Kazooie plus K-Slugs with little hearts in it in his notebook.
Yeah, at work I'm just scribbling, and they're like, "Kevin, what are you doing?" I'm like, nothing.
I was just thinking about Banjo.
Who the hell is Banjo? But yeah, no, I love this game as a kid. It's definitely one of my all-time favorites. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one. This comes from like Rare's prime era of like video games, like, you know, where they had like Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Donkey Kong 64, you know, you name it. Perfect Dark, how could I forget?
Oh yeah.
They're just rolling out the big ones during this time. So, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So for a little bit of that classic deal for real background information, Banjo-Kazooie came out for the N64, of course, developed by our good friends at Rareware, a UK developer, some friends of ours from across the pond. As Kevin said, very, very well-known N64 repertoire, including GoldenEye, Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie. Also games for the Super Nintendo like Donkey Kong Country. And they're still around today. They're not the same company. They've kind of splintered off into different groups. But back in this day, they were doing it big. This game came out in 98, which is pretty cool. Actually, that means their 20-year anniversary is coming up.
Oh, shoot.
Because it was released in like June or July of 98. So yeah, Banjo and Kazooie about to turn 20.
Oof, that makes me feel old.
Hits me right in the
Ouch.
right in the free radicals.
Well, as some people might know, I spin run. I sped runned this game way back in the day when I used to stream pretty frequently on Twitch, which is how Peter and I met, but the fact checkers already know this. I currently rank, at the time of this recording, the 83rd fastest Banjo-Kazooie 100% speedrunner in the world. You can see this at www.speedrun.com/BK. I was ranked 69th in the world at one point, but there have been like a ton of optimizations to the game since my last PB run in November of 2016. Can you believe that, Peter? That's the last time I got a PB in Banjo.
Damn. My last THPS PB was in January of 2017, so not that far behind.
Yeah.
We're past our prime.
Don't say that. I've still got many more hours to kill when I come back to streaming. By the way, if you guys haven't had a chance, or if you somehow don't know about Twitch at this point, I've been wanting to say this. Twitch is such and you know, we're a video game podcast. So Twitch is something, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, you like video games, I hope, or at least if you don't, that's okay too. But Twitch is definitely a very good place to go if you're looking for more video game content. And it has a great community where you can go and just chill with people who also love video games and love playing video games. And if you like watching people play video games, definitely a place to go. I love Twitch, and I plan to be back on there soon. Peter has his own Twitch stream. His username is deal_for_real. So go give him a follow there if you need.
You forgot the second underscore, buddy.
Oh, deal_for_real. Fourscore.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
But yeah, anyway, enough about Twitch. I just wanted to say that tidbit, but enough about that. You ready to get down to the breakdown, man?
Yeah, well, one quick thing is that although Kevin has a million hours of experience with this game, I actually started playing it for basically the first time pretty recently, specifically to talk about it on the show. So I've put about 6 hours into the game so far, and I've 100%ed 3 of the levels with some help from Kevin. But also I spent a lot of time watching Kevin do speedruns, so I have seen the whole game many times. So a lot of what I say will not be from first person experience necessarily, but it might as well be, I think.
Yeah, he 100% the game spiritually with me.
Many times, more than I can count.
Yeah.
More than any human should.
Yeah. Well, all right, man.
Yeah, I'm ready to get into gameplay. I will. How about I start, and I can start with kind of the broader things since I don't have as much experience, and then you can jump in and like fill in all the gaps.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. So overall, Banjo-Kazooie is a 3D platforming game for anyone who might not know. You control Banjo and Kazooie, and you run around in this big world, many worlds that are connected together in some ways. And the goal is to collect a bunch of things to progress through the game. And to do that, you have to go around and traverse some difficult terrain, solve a few puzzles, defeat some enemies. If you ever played Super Mario 64, it's very similar to that. So that's kind of the overall look at what the game is. I feel like sometimes you and I forget to do that before we jump in. So I figured we should kind of establish the context. But it is a platforming game, long story short. And I think the platforming generally feels really good, which is important since that's what you're doing the entire game. You control Banjo, and Banjo can do many different actions with the help of his bird friend Kazooie, who lives in his backpack. You can use Kazooie's wings to fly around, to attack enemies. Banjo can do rolls on the ground. He can... Well, I guess actually mostly Kazooie does most of the work, except for your basic walking and running. But the point is, there's a bunch of different things you can do with these characters. And it really adds a lot of variety to the gameplay just because you can do so many different actions with them.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think not only that, but they make it really fun and unique, even with the movement in this game. So you've got your flutter, your talon trot, your rat-a-tat-rap. I know all of these sound like foreign to a bunch of different people who don't know what these moves are, but like there's so many different moves in the name that have unique names and they do unique skills, most of which, like you already said, Kazooie performs. They make several references in the game saying like Kazooie does all the work and stuff like that, which I find pretty funny. But you go throughout the game and you have to learn these moves from a mole named Bottles. You go around, you collect notes and jiggies and things like that, and you go up to Bottles and you're like, hey, Bottles, can you teach me this move? He's like, sure, man. He'll teach you a move. And then, you learn the move and you use it against your enemies. You use it to get different jiggies and stuff like that. You learn different moves in different levels. So it's a really unique concept. While it is similar to Super Mario 64, and it is a platformer, so I think that's where the similarities basically stop, and except for the fact that you have to collect things. You collect things, and it's on a platform. After that, I think it's a vastly different game once you narrow it down to that niche.
I'd be interested for us to kind of get into that idea later on. I mean, not that this is a podcast about Super Mario 64, but maybe it's because I'm not as experienced as you. I'm not the expert, so maybe that's why to me it seems like they are very similar, even like beyond just a surface level. But we can get into that. I think the more things that we talk about, maybe those differences will become clear.
Right.
One thing I do want to say about all the actions, although they are really fun and they add a lot of variety, as a player who's somewhat new to the game, I find myself forgetting which button combinations do what, because there are several modifier buttons that you can press, like the Z button, which makes you crouch. The Z button is important to doing a lot of things. The various C buttons are also important. They'll do different things depending on the other thing that you're doing when you press them. The R button can be used to give yourself finer movement when you're swimming and when you're flying. By the way, swimming has been very frustrating for me so far. Maybe that's one thing I could talk about a little bit. But that is one fairly minor drawback that I've noticed, and it's probably just a failure on my part. Like, oh, there's too many things to do for me to keep track of in my little gorilla brain. You know, like, I imagine that's very different for you since, not to belabor the point, but you have a lot of experience. But did you ever notice that or think about that when you were playing the game?
Oh, it's actually interesting. I wrote kind of something similar in my notes that kind of touches on this point. So I think... So in the last episode of THPS, we discussed how as your skill grows in the game, the more fun it kind of becomes. The more you learn what the buttons do, the more comfortable you feel with the movement, the more fun the game gets. And that just kind of exponentially goes up. Even when you get into speedrunning, you're like, okay, this is much more fun than when I would normally play the game because I could play it much faster, much better, and stuff like that. With Banjo, it's interesting because it has that. So as your skill gets better and you learn the moves and you get more comfortable, it has that skill increase where the fun kind of goes up as well, or the difficulty in gameplay, I should even say, it goes up until you reach the threshold of like, okay, yeah, I think I want to speedrun this game. And then you start learning all the little nuances and all the minute details that you're supposed to perform. And then you're like, wow, this game could be polished a little bit more. You start to notice some of the things that are really just kind of glaring issues with some of the gameplay, like maybe lag or some kind of finicky things within the movement in the game. So I think it's kind of this weird bell curve almost. It's not a complete bell curve because I don't think it goes completely all the way down as you get like so good at the game, but like it kind of tapers down a little bit. And I know that goes without saying for every speedrun or speedrun game, right? Like, you know, you get more frustrated because you try to do like the super optimized stuff, but it's not even that. It's more of you're playing the game to its fullest. So you're discovering some things that aren't so optimized that you wouldn't normally. And then they start to kind of bother you and they're kind of buggy. This makes it sound like I'm hating on the game, but I'm definitely not. I love this game and I love the gameplay even. But I do think there's like a weird curve going on there when it comes to level of skill and the amount of fun that you have in the game and how difficult it is for you.
Yeah. It's kind of like an ignorance is bliss sort of thing, where if you don't have like such high standards, then you don't get disappointed when things aren't perfect. And so I think that's kind of like what you're saying, where if you are, you know, a god at this game, then the little imperfections can kind of accumulate if they always get in the way of you doing what you want, which is like playing the game as perfectly as possible. So yeah, I think that someone like me wouldn't really get to that point probably, but someone like you or other speedrunners, they probably would. Yeah. And I think that makes total sense.
Right. Yeah. And there's things like missed inputs that wouldn't bother a normal everyday person. I mean, it might on a very crucial moment, but yeah, it's definitely super detrimental to a speedrunner, especially since he knows the implications of dying and stuff like that. But yeah, another thing is there are some levels that lag. I mean, they just try to go ham on this game, and levels like Click Clock Wood, which are absolutely amazing, and like, oh my gosh, look at this level. They can be kind of laggy when you get up to the top and there's all those graphical models and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I do want to say I do love the freedom of movement in this game. Flutter is definitely a very unique kind of way to move around the map. So is Talon Trot. I think using Kazooie for like most of the moves and stuff like that, it just had a really unique move set. This is why I think Banjo should be in Smash. So Nintendo, if you want to help your boy out, I know Microsoft said they'd be happy to let Banjo cross over. So
did they really?
Yeah, they did.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Banjo, it's your 20th birthday, we've noticed, so we're giving you permission to take the car out for a spin and go visit your friends at Nintendo Land.
Yeah, for real. Oh, I would be so hype. I just hope they wouldn't ruin the model. Like, they would make it like nuts and bolts Banjo-Kazooie. Eesh.
Yeah. You want to hear a fun fact about the origin of Kazooie?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
I learned this in my my trivia trawl last night when I was doing my research. But the reason why Kazooie was created was because originally, like for moves like the flutter, Banjo's backpack was originally just supposed to sprout wings temporarily while he did that move. And then they thought, oh, what if there was a move where you could use like little legs from the backpack to run around? That eventually became Talon Trot. But before Kazooie was involved, they just made little legs like grow out of the backpack, not being attached to a bird living in the backpack or anything like that. And so eventually they were adding more moves that would do stuff like this. And then they thought, why don't we just have a character in the backpack, which then became Kazooie.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, just put a head on there and you're good.
Yeah.
That's funny. I didn't know that. I didn't know that in terms of like dev stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned swimming not being very fun for you. I do want to say that I think flying is pretty bad. I think that definitely could have been polished a little bit better. Although I guess, you know, with what they were trying to do with it and how they were trying to do it, I guess I could see it being a little bit hard. Although I think Super Mario did the flying thing better. But swimming, in my opinion, is not as bad as people think. Maybe that's just because I'm a pro, but you do have two different speeds, and then the R button, which kind of like is able to like move you sharply in the water. So you can move at different speeds, and if you need to turn super sharp, you can use the A button to go slower and the B one to go fast. I thought it was really cool how they implemented all that stuff. But Clanker, I believe you're going to mention where you had trouble with Clankers. I was watching your Twitch stream, and you seem to struggle with that. I want to say everybody has struggled with Clanker, especially in the pit down where Gloop is. I even still find that annoying. And it was mostly the camera, I think, that's to blame for that being kind of stupid.
Yeah, that segues well into my point about the camera, which I wanted to make.
Right.
For the record, since we didn't really explain it very much, Clankers Cavern is a mostly underwater level in the game, and there's a section where I have to go deep underwater to do a task, and there is a fish there that will provide you with oxygen bubbles. But because of the camera and because of the swimming controls, if you're not used to everything, it can be difficult to get the oxygen and replenish your, oxygen, I guess. So I died a couple times doing that, and I became somewhat frustrated. But eventually I learned myself up and got good and was able to do that. But yeah, I do want to talk about the camera a little bit. In my research, I found out that the camera is actually a fairly universal complaint from a lot of people. So the camera, you can use the C buttons to move the camera around Banjo and Kazooie, and you can also zoom in and out and do stuff like that. Again, very much like Super Mario 64. Hopefully we don't say that too many times during this podcast. We probably already hit our quota.
Yeah.
But the issue with the camera, and this is an issue that Super Mario 64 does not have, is that sometimes the camera doesn't rotate. I've been finding that usually if you're close to a wall or some other interfering object, the camera will not rotate in order to prevent it from clipping. And also in order to prevent it from like zooming in too far or something like that, I guess. But it feels fairly inconsistent. Like I often will kind of be mashing C left or C right trying to move the camera and I can't. And then it always takes me a second to realize, oh, maybe it's because I'm close to this wall. And then in some situations, like I think underwater, you might have mentioned this, but I don't think you can ever rotate the camera underwater unless I'm mistaken.
It's more so like when you hold the R button, it kind of rotates the camera for you.
Yeah.
That's kind of another thing that it does.
Yeah, because pressing R centers the camera behind you, right? Kind of like in Zelda, you can do that with the Z button.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it also makes you turn sharper at the same time.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
The camera complaints and then the complaints about me forgetting what buttons do what all the time. Those are really only the only complaints that I have so far. Again, I haven't put in enough hours into the game to have like a conclusive viewpoint on this, but everything else that I think about the game is really positive. So I'm kind of glad that I've gotten my negatives out of the way. I do have some more points here, of course, but Kevin, if there's anything that you want to say further, like whether it's critiques or compliments, gonna kind of pass the ball to you here.
I actually have one more critique for the gameplay. I actually wrote down a ton for the gameplay. I don't know why I was so critical. I still really like the gameplay overall, but being a speedrunner, there's just so much things that I notice. But I think even on a casual level, this resonates with some people. So in the game, you have to collect Jiggy's notes, Jinjo's Mumbo tokens, sometimes even moves, depending on each level. Each level, you can get up to 100 notes. The notes are basically currency in the hub world. You can get up to 100 notes per level. But if you die, you lose all of your notes and you have a high score of whatever note. If you die or leave the level, you have a high score of however many notes you attain for that level. This is going to sound very confusing, and honestly, it kind of really is. But so let's say if I had 78 notes in a level and I died. Well, my high score for that level is 78. So then I would exit the world and I would have 78 more notes overall to my total than I had before. If I go back in the level, I would have to collect those 78 notes again, or not the same 78 notes, but just 78 notes again. And then once I started getting more, that's when it would add back onto my total. Mm-hmm. So that can be very annoying or tedious if you accidentally die or like right before you get 100 notes or something like that. Then you have to go back all the way through and you don't really remember where the notes that you got previously. And it just kind of makes the game a little bit more tedious. I kind of wish that whatever notes that you did get, you would keep. And especially since you need most of the notes from every level anyway to get through the entire game. And like, if you want like a lot of help against Grunty, the final boss, you really need to get almost all of the notes. So notes are pretty crucial, and for them to kind of, for their punish game to be that strong on that, I thought was a little too much, but overall, I still think it's fine.
Yeah.
So the notes weren't too hard to find. It's just, in the case of like Treasure Trove Cove, for instance, there's that one note on the little cliff, like somebody probably never found that and just looked all around for that one note. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it can be kind of a hassle.
Yeah. I wrote down the same thing, that I found the punishment for dying in terms of notes to be pretty devastating, really, especially if you don't know about it beforehand. You know, from me watching your speedruns and from you advising me as such when I was playing the game, I knew very well that if I died, I would be stuck with whatever note total I had, and I'd have to collect more if I didn't already get the 100. So a lot of my gameplay at the beginning of a level was revolving around me getting all the notes and then not dying, you know, on your suggestion as well. And so I can't imagine if you're somebody who's playing the game for the first time, or, you know, otherwise doesn't have much experience. If you're collecting your notes, having a good time, then you die, and you're like, oh, that's probably not a big deal. And then come to find out it might have been a big deal, because you might need those notes to progress, as you said, and then you have to collect all of them again. Because you do need certain totals of notes to open doors in the hub world that give you access to other areas. So, yeah, they are really important. They're not very optional. If they were more optional, it would be fine, I think, the way that they punish you for dying. But because they're pretty crucial, I do think it is a bit harsh. So I'm practically 100% in agreement with you here.
Cool. Well, I think you wanted to get on to some of the positives, and I am too, because this game's amazing, and I think I'm just been too critical of the gameplay.
Yeah. I will say, speaking of the hub world, I really enjoy the way that they did it in this game. The hub world here is in Gruntilda's, lair, I guess? Yeah, Grunty's lair is the name of it. Gruntilda is the final boss of the game. She's a witch who kidnapped Banjo's sister, and you have to go get her back. That's kind of the story in a tiny nutshell. But her lair is the hub world, and her lair, because it is kind of a villain's lair, she has some enemies, she has some traps, she has some like little puzzles in her lair, which is really fun because it makes the hub world feel like a good part of the game that has stuff for you to do. And it's not just a hallway connecting point A and point B together, you know? And so I really appreciate that. It's a little bit different, again, from Super Mario 64, where the hub world is like a good place. You know, it's Princess Peach's castle, and there are things there that help you. In this game, it's the opposite, and it's pretty neat and pretty fun for that reason.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not something I wrote down in my notes, but that is a very interesting point. The hub world is fun, and it actually has a lot of puzzles, and can be confusing on which way to go.
Yeah,
if you're new to the game, but it keeps you interested, even if it is confusing. It kind of makes you want to explore the hub world, and yeah, it is slightly kind of dangerous.
It's dangerous,
but I kind of like it. Yeah, so that is a very good point. I think the concept of each level, in terms of the collectibles and what you need to get overall, is very fun. I like that you don't... Well, I hesitate to make another comparison.
Oof.
But Super Mario 64 is definitely an easy one to compare it to because it has collectibles and it's platforming. So of the collectibles, I did enjoy these much better, and I do like that you don't have to exit the world every time you get a Jiggy.
Yeah.
So I did like that difference. The transformations were a lot of fun. And really just overall, like, Rare makes everything you do in this game, in terms of the gameplay, they make it fun. Collecting is fun. Doing the transformations is fun. Learning a new move is fun. It's all intriguing, and it keeps you wanting more, and so you just kind of naturally progress through the game, and it's just, I don't know, they did a really good job of just enticing you with what they offered in terms of the gameplay.
Yeah. You're able to keep your momentum going because of the fact that you don't have to leave the level every time you get the main collectible, which in this game is a Jiggy.
Yeah.
So that might be something that they learned directly from Super Mario 64, where they were playing it. Like,
yeah.
You know, I really wish I didn't have to exit the damn level every time. Oh, guess what? In our new game, you don't have to. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, easy.
Easy. Well, cool, man.
Did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I got a couple. These both have to do with the variety and the gameplay. So I'll kind of kill two birds with one stone here. Two Kazooies, if you will. So almost every level, correct me if I'm wrong, has a shaman named Mumbo who can transform you into a new little form. Usually the forms are based on animals or other things you might find in the environment. For example, in the first main level, which is called Mumbos Mountain, there's a bunch of ants or termites, probably ants, and they have an anthill that you can explore very easily if you go up to Mumbo and let him transform you into an ant. That form gives you the ability to climb surfaces that normally you couldn't or would be difficult to do. And most of the levels have something like that. And it's always very cute. It's like, your little ant or your little pumpkin or a little bumblebee, something like that. And some of them are more fun than others, but overall it's a fun time just to go to Mumbo and see what he's got in store for you and have more of the world opened up to you for that. And that's just a fun little way to spice up the game, I think.
Oh man, yeah, I love the transformations. It just adds like another aspect to the game that you're just like, ah, yeah, you're right. It is kind of cute.
Yeah.
Real quick, what's your favorite transformation that you've seen from me? I know you haven't played all of them, but what's the favorite one?
I'm pretty partial to the pumpkin, I think.
Dude, same. Ryan hates the pumpkin, but I I freaking love the pumpkin. I'm so glad that you said that because I know like right now I'm calling it out again. Ryan's like, gosh dang it, no. he just shouted that in his car while he's driving to Houston.
Dang it.
I hope I'm like super like on point with these like predictions of Ryan's actions when he hears like these things. I want him to like personally text me, but I don't think he's gotten through all the episodes yet. We got a lot of high quality content out there.
How can you be a guest on the episode and not make your way through all of the other episodes?
Yeah, you should listen the exact moment that it comes out.
You owe us, Everett.
Wow, that was really cool. I liked how you did that.
Oh, thanks.
It sounded really cool. Like you don't need any voice effects for that one. Anyway, we've went on too much of a tangent here, but yeah, I agree with you. Transformation's awesome.
Okay, my last point.
Okay.
Some levels have little mini games that you can play. One good example is Bubble Gloop Swamp. And there are two mini games you can play here. And one of them, you have to play a memory game where these turtles will kind of sing a song and then you have to memorize which ones sang in what order. And then another mini game in that same level is a competition against a greedy crocodile named Mr. Vile.
Oh, Mr. Vile.
And you have to eat more worms than Mr. Vile does in a certain time limit. Both of these mini games, along with the other ones in the levels, once again, similar to the transformations, they don't make or break the game, I don't think, not by a country mile, but they do add a nice little amount of variety that can break up the platforming. And there are also ways to showcase the personality that Rare put into their characters, into their game, because like the turtles, maybe they don't have so much of a personality, but Vile, the greedy crocodile, he definitely does. Speedrunners hate him. And other characters too, like there's a polar bear named Boggy that you have to defeat in a sled race. And that's another like opportunity for some silly dialogue and, fun gameplay. And it's just little things like that add up and make the whole experience really nice.
Yeah, it's funny. As you're saying this, I want to go back and play those segments right now. Like I love those segments so much. I mean, Vile can be kind of, well, I only hate Vile because he can ruin a run, that greedy croc. But I freaking love the characters in this game. And you're right, it is a nice shift in pace from the normal platforming. It doesn't make you feel like it's the same thing every level. You kind of go out of your way and you're like, oh, what's this? What do I have to do for this jiggy? And you're like, oh, this is quite the something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. Well, cool, man. I believe that does it for all of your points. I think that you said final point, right?
That is correct.
And that does it for all of my points. So I think we are moving on from gameplay. But before we do, we should give our ratings.
Yeah, I gave mine a hot, fresh, personal pan pizza, 85.
Ooh, nice. I gave mine a 94.
Nice, dude.
I think, just to kind of sum it up again, I think the gameplay is super fun, keeps you engaged. The movement's really nice. I like the movement. It can be a little bit annoying at times, but overall, I have a lot of fun just moving around in the game, playing the game. I like the concept of the game. It's just really fun to me. It's one of my favorite games, and I just love it.
It's kind of funny because I remember with our Tony Hawk's Pro Skater review, I gave the gameplay a much higher score than you did, and in the Banjo-Kazooie review, it's kind of the opposite. So we're both favoring the gameplay of the games that we speedrun, which I guess is not a surprise to most people.
For sure. Well, let's move on to aesthetics because aesthetics. Because I think
aesthetics.
To visuals we go. And I guess I will start out with this one since you started out the last segment.
Go for it.
The characters are freaking fun and interesting. I love the way they look. I love the way the levels look. Everything has eyes, even the vegetables. I just love how fun and goofy the game is and how silly it can be without being over the top silly. It's just the right amount of humor. Leave it to the Brits to just go ahead and take the reins on that.
Cheerio, mate.
And I like the way the moves look. I think they're also very fun and unique. It's just they do a good job of, once again, like drawing you into the game with its charm in the moves, in the levels, in the characters, the way they look, well, the way everything looks and feels. It just has this charm to it that just kind of draws you in and is wanting you to want more.
Yeah, I agree. All the whimsy and character of the game is backed up by some very strong visuals from a technical standpoint as well. The models, I think, look pretty sharp. All the colors are vibrant. The textures look good, which is a huge point in favor of this game versus Super Mario 64, which had probably the ugliest textures I've ever seen. That's an exaggeration. But yeah, technically, the game's a feat, visually speaking. And I was actually reading about some cool thing that they did. I don't remember the details, but because the game was rendering so much detail at any given time, they had to do this thing that like reshuffled the memory as the player was playing, or like defragment the memory or something like that. Maybe I'll send you the article and you can read it because it's probably pretty cool from a dev perspective.
I actually know what you're talking about. Yeah, they did this cool thing. They were revolutionary in this concept, but it's pretty much standard practice now. And I don't know exactly. Like, I would also need to quote the article on what they did, but I'm pretty sure it was something along the lines of keeping all the textures, like all the relevant textures in memory in such an optimized and dynamic way that when you leave an area and you enter a new one, the old ones are gone and the new ones are where you're at.
This game also has a lot of fun little visual touches. Some examples of this are actually like kind of in the heads-up display. For one thing, all the characters in the game have little like animated heads that appear whenever they're saying dialogue.
Yeah.
There are little 3D models for all of the collectible items, like not just the big ones like jiggies and notes and things like that, but every time you collect a red feather or a Mumbo token or a gold feather or whatever, a little like 3D model will appear on the screen along with a sound effect. We'll get to the sounds later. But yeah, just another way for them to inject life into like every nook and cranny of this game, like, you know, even the heads-up display. And I say this a lot on this podcast, but like no one needed to do that, and they did anyway, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think Rare does an excellent job of doing those things, going the extra mile on things like that. They just love putting their own touch onto things like that. I do want to say, and I kind of realized this when you were playing on stream. The reason you had a lot of trouble with Gloop as well, or going down there into Clankers Cavern, is because of that stupid 2D textured bubble. It wasn't an actual 3D model. Because I guess, I don't know how... Yeah, that was stupid. Because it ruined your perspective, especially given with the camera. Like, it would just, like, you didn't know where to hit that bubble. And a lot of people have that problem, so I still have that problem. And it could be very frustrating. So that's one little critique I could say about the visuals. But other than that, really stellar.
That's not really any fault of this game either. That's something that was standard practice and almost every N64 game probably, and also even many GameCube games. Like Super Smash Bros. Melee has a lot of visual effects that are rendered like that. Then again, Smash Bros. Is pretty much a 2D game, so it's not quite the same. But yeah, a bunch of 3D N64 games have like 2D sprites that function as fake 3D models. Usually I don't think it's that much of a problem, but the bubbles in Clankers Cavern were definitely a spot where a 3D real ass bubble would have been appreciated.
Yeah. It cracked me up at the same time. I felt so bad.
Don't laugh at my pain.
Well, honestly, I don't have much else to say on visuals. I don't know if you have anything else, but it's pretty short and sweet for me.
Yeah. The only other thing that I want to say is that I really appreciate how the heads-up display disappears whenever it's not needed. This is something that I think is fairly standard practice in a lot of games now, a lot of like adventuring type games. But I always like having as little HUD on the screen as possible, and this game was, I would imagine, a fairly early example of a game doing that, because I don't think that was really standard back in this time. So yeah, like whenever you lose health, your health meter will come up, or whenever you are swimming and you have a limited oxygen supply, that'll come up. Whenever you collect an item, that will come up. But all that stuff will go away after a few seconds if you don't need to know it anymore. And I really like that.
Cool. Just out of curiosity, what games have the HUD that you find very annoying around this period of time, like the N64 era?
Annoying is a stretch. Like, it doesn't really bother me, but I appreciate when it's not there. One example, you'll never guess this one, is Super Mario 64. That game's HUD is there all the time. The health meter is not. The health meter is only there when you need it, which actually is the same way that is in Banjo. Games like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark will have an ammo display there all the time, although you can turn that off optionally in the in the options menu.
Right.
Mario Kart 64 also will have a lot of HUD up.
Yeah.
Star Fox does. I mean, in those games, maybe that's a little more understandable, because those are games where like you always need to have an eye on your ammo supply, or like the shield of your aircraft, or the map of the track, or any of those things. In this game, it's a little bit more leisurely, unless you're speedrunning, of course. But I think the type of game very much governs whether you should have the HUD up at all times or not. And this type of game that Banjo is, it's a game where I don't think you need to have it up all the time.
Cool. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that does it for me.
That's it for me.
That's it for me. I gave the visuals a 95. Hot, fresh 95.
That is hot and fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I give mine a 90.
90.
90.
Cool. That's a big step for you too, because, well, actually the 85 was big for you.
Yeah, the 85 was like a step within a step.
I'm really proud of how far you've come, man.
You know, people said I couldn't do it, but I said fuck the haters, and here I am.
Yeah, here we are, giving 85s and 90s. So cool. Well, let's move on to the audio.
Oh God, I'm just ready to have like just a really appreciative time with the audio.
Yeah. All right. Well, then why don't you take it away, buddy?
Sure thing. So, I think you cannot talk about Banjo-Kazooie without talking about just how amazing the soundtrack is. The music in this game was composed by A1, very famous, very well-loved Grant Kirkhope, one of our British friends. This guy is a living legend for his work on the Rare games as well as some other ones. But all the music in this game is just so... except for like the obvious villain themes and things like that. Everything else in the game is just so upbeat, so cheery. The music modulates in really cool ways, where every level will have like 3 to 5 variations of the main theme, depending on whether you're on land or underwater or in like a dungeon type of area, or if you're close to like a certain defining part of the level. Like the music will change smoothly between one version and the other to match your environment. And that's just, I don't know, like it's a pretty old trick by this point, but it's just always really cool, man. Like I don't know what else to say about it. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I agree. The soundtrack in this game is absolutely perfect. The audio in this game is absolutely perfect. I love the sounds to this game. It's also fun and like energetic and like interesting, and I don't know, man. I agree with you. I literally cannot complain about one soundtrack, one sound in this game. A lot of people would complain about the characters and like how they talk, like ooh, 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 ooh. But I actually love that because you see we're laughing about that right now, and it just kind of has its own charm. Like I love it. I really, in terms of audio, this has to be one of the best games ever, and for me at least, in terms of like sounds and soundtracks and little nuance effects and things like that. Even like, especially for back in its day, like, you know, having this carrot chasing you and you can hear the bouncing effect. You're like doink, doink. It's just like, I don't know. It just adds to the charm of this game. They did a really good job with the aesthetics of this game. So
I totally agree.
I have no complaints.
Yeah, you know, I will say this is kind of a little points of mine, but the little talking heads thing where they go like ooh, 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 I actually do kind of find that annoying sometimes, and I totally understand why other people do it. And I think that in general, the sound in the game can be a bit much at times. I think if you're playing the game for like hours on end, then maybe you do get tired of hearing like so many upbeat themes and so many like goofy sound effects and so many people going like whoosh and like doing and like, you know, things like that. Because they do have a lot of like human, you know, mouth sound effects, which actually is really funny and fits the game well.
Yeah.
But, do you get what I'm saying? Where like it can be a little bit much sometimes, like just so much like sugar-coated sound.
Yeah.
That really would be the only like complaints I would have. Everything else I think is just stellar.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think a lot of people can look into it that way. But I guess for me personally, I feel like I'm such a goofy guy, and that's such a goofy game. And the way they did the audio is just such a goofy way. It's all perfect for me. Like that is Banjo-Kazooie, especially personified through its audio, is me in a game. Like that
is Banjo.
I am Banjo. But it, and you know, going back to the games, and like if you hadn't played it in a long time, it's impossible to forget how it sounds. It's just so addicting and so memorable, and impossible not to sing and hum along with it. The soundtrack was great. Grant, like, you did a fantastic job. I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but if you do, job well done, buddy. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times before, but here's 1,001. Great job, man.
Can I tell a funny story about Grant Kirkhope?
Oh yeah, go ahead, man.
I actually don't know if I've told you this before, but back in like 2013, I sent him an email. I don't know why, but I was just feeling very appreciative of the Perfect Dark soundtrack, which I have on my iPod, by the way. And I sent him an email, and I just said, hey man, like I really love your music on all these different games that I've played, and you know, I just want you to know that. Like, I'm sure it's nothing you haven't heard before, but I just want to say hi and what's up and thank you. And to my great shock, he emailed me back like 2 days later, or like some very reasonable short time frame for a guy of his like legacy. And he said, hey man, I'm really glad you like the soundtrack. And he like sent me a link to download the Perfect Dark soundtrack. Like just straight up. Like he just sent me a link. I was like, yo, this is sick. Like this guy's my best friend now.
Yeah, you start emailing back and forth. All of a sudden he stops replying.
Yeah, like he and I are kind of buds now, I'd like to think, you know, maybe not totally, but yeah, it's just so cool. And like that's probably one of the most famous people I've ever talked to has been well, first Jeff Rowley, of course.
Yeah, I was about to say
Jeff Rowley, and then also Grant Kirkhope, people that I've interacted with who are just really great. And it's just, oh shit. This might be important. I have to answer this.
Okay.
Hello? Dude, what's up? We were just talking about you, man.
It's Grant.
Yeah, on the podcast. Yeah, on Interstate Gamers. Yeah, the one that I told you about. Yeah, no, we're just talking about Banjo-Kazooie and just how great your music is and all that. Yeah, I know, you know, like preaching to the choir here, but dude, just amazing work, man.
Stop it.
Yeah, you know, my friend Kevin, yeah, I told you about him, right? I told you about how we stream on Twitch and stuff. Yeah, well, dude, I'm on the show right now, but we're recording, actually. Kevin's cracking up over here because we were just talking about you. But yeah, let me go. And yeah, go ahead and send me a link to that album you're working on. I'd love to hear it. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. It's our secret. Yeah, all right. Oh, and say hi to the kids for me, will you? Yeah, okay. Thanks, man. Later. You'll never believe who that was.
Okay, that was pretty good. Oh, man. Yeah, you better hope he has kids. What if he doesn't have kids?
Yeah, well, then I fucked up.
Oh, man, that was great. That was great. Perfect timing for Perfect Dark.
Thank you. I will say that I learned that little comedy trick from another podcast I listen to, so I'm not like a super genius, but...
Dude, that was... No, that was really good. You actually had me believe in it for like half a second. But anyway,
that's all that I need.
Where were we? All right, that's the podcast. We don't really need to discuss anymore. I mean, that's everything.
Yeah. Well, actually, I do have a few little small compliments to give Grant Kirkhope that I haven't already told him. So one thing that is really cool is that the game revolves around the idea of musical motifs, things that appear repeatedly throughout the game or throughout individual levels. And it's really cool because what Grant did is he was able to build off of those themes to really like extend the soundtrack in interesting ways. For example, I was looking at like an official, or not official, but I was looking at a full-length OST post on YouTube, and it was like 3.5 hours of music, a lot of which share the same like melodies and chords because they're all kind of based on each other. But it was all still interesting because of the ways that Grant varied it up depending on the environment or the exact situation. It's just cool. Like, I think there's a lot to be said for consistency and things like this. And this is an example of consistency that has enough variety to keep it interesting, but then enough that's the same to make you kind of feel like you're in a unified world.
Right. I agree. And isn't that kind of similar to Super Mario World soundtrack, if I'm wrong? I mean, it's been a while since I've played it, since, the last podcast we had about it. But I believe Jason mentioned something about it in our only fan mail that we've gotten about simplicity and consistency in terms of soundtracks.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing, I think, and this is definitely a great application of it too.
Yeah. Cool.
Speaking of consistency, this is something that I'm not actually quite as psyched about, but I'm fairly sure that every song in the game is in the key of C.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Which is kind of neat. I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, it feels a little tiny bit lazy, and it's like one critique that I have, but it's kind of a nothing critique, but it's still something.
Oh man, Grant's gonna be mad at you now.
Yeah, shit. I'm gonna have to edit all that out.
Yeah. Well, cool.
Yeah, that wraps up what I have to say about the audio.
Yeah, same here.
Cool. What'd you give it, dude?
All right. Monumental moment here on the Interstate Gamers.
Don't tell me.
Wait! Don't tell me!
And it's a 100! Yeah, perfect. I have absolutely no complaints. Audio, there's nothing I could say. Like, this is... I don't know if that's my first 100. I think it is.
It's gotta be. There's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. A 100.
My heart's kind of racing right now, dude. Just so excited for you.
Yeah,
for all
I know.
Our listeners.
Yeah, I finally gave something a 100. And I'm a very critical person.
Yep.
And I don't give out hundreds very easily.
Nope.
Because it has to be perfect. But this game's perfect in terms of audio. So that's what I gave it. What'd you give it? I swear if you say like a 50, I will come over there to Denver.
Well, if that's what it takes. No, I'm not far behind you, dude. I gave it a hot, fresh 95.
Dang. There we go. Cool.
And from a musical expert like me, that's saying something.
I know. It really is. You were actually telling me that you listened to the soundtrack today and texted me about it, how hype you were on it. So that was really cool to see while I was at work.
Yeah. Ooh, one thing I want to ask you. I meant to ask you this earlier. In a previous episode, we were talking about OSTs that we like, and you mentioned Banjo's being way up there, of course. I was wondering, do you have a single favorite theme from this game?
Single favorite. I don't want to be cliche and say freeze easy, but it might still be. Freeze easy is pretty good. I'm always a fan of Bubble Gloop, and I'm a fan of Gobies. I'm going to end up like naming all of them, but freeze easy is a pretty good one. We'll just say that one.
That surprises me. I don't really know why, but I just wasn't necessarily expecting that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, mine, because so far I do have one favorite, and I've heard enough music of the game to be able to say this with a fair amount of conviction, I think. But my favorite is, what's it called? Treasure Trove Cove.
Yeah, that's Ryan's favorite too.
Yeah. Ryan's like, yes.
Yes, I love Mom. Yeah, he is. And Mad Monster Mansion. That's my favorite level in Banjo-Kazooie. There's like the organ you can go in and play with Mott's hand. I thought that was pretty cool.
Speaking of levels, I think it's time for us to get into the content.
The content? All right, well, let's get into that content. I think it is my turn to start off. I'm just going to take the reins. Okay, so the content of this game is perfectly concise. You have the same missions to accomplish for every level with slight variances how you go about those tasks. Every task, every jiggy, every event in that game is an absolute blast, and it's a fun experience the whole way through. I would say this game is very high replayability. So for me, the content that's within the game and basically how long it takes to play it, and I'm coming from a speedrunner's perspective, it takes me 2.5 hours to beat the game 100%. And an any percent one is like an hour or something like that too. So it's still got a pretty good amount of content, but it's not too long in my opinion. So I think it's very high replayability, and it keeps you, it's not necessarily, doesn't have a lot of extra content, but like I said, it does a good job of immersing you in the game, and it has its own charm to it that kind of just draws you in. And it doesn't necessarily leave you screaming, I want more content. I want more of this, more of that. It's like, again, I want to go through that again. I want to experience those things again. I just want to play the game again. And so that's why people do many runs of Banjo, dude, because they just love it. And that's why the top runners, they replay Spiral Mountain over and over again. Oh, Spiral Mountain, that's a good soundtrack.
That is a good soundtrack. Oh, that might be a sleeper hit right there.
Yeah, that might be it. Anyway, yeah. That's how I kind of feel about the conciseness of the game. I love its simplicity, yet like intricacy at the same time. It's this weird mix, which you think you can't have both, but you can. You can.
Yeah, I agree. I have kind of like little supplements to say about most of the things you said. In terms of extra content, you're right that there isn't really much, if any. Like there's no multiplayer, there's no like real bonus features, I guess, but things like that were planned. I believe this game was originally going to have a multiplayer, but they simply couldn't really fit it in at the time. That was something that would come in Banjo-Tooie 2 years later. There also was an extra feature that was supposed to link Banjo-Kazooie with Banjo-Tooie. They were kind of like, they're trying to like future implement this thing. That ended up not working out very well just because of hardware limitations of the N64. But it shows that these guys are trying to do so much stuff, right? Like the game was very ambitious, and even though they couldn't realize, 101% of their ambitions, they got really close. And the rest of the game, I think, more than makes up for it, as you were saying, the simplicity, but at the same time, there's variety. Like with even the mini games and things like that I talked about earlier, those help extend the content and give variety and interest. Once again, this is an N64 game that has 9 levels. I don't know what it is about these N64 games that have, just 9 levels. Just give me 10. Well, I guess Spiral Mountain's kind of a 10th level. But anyway, yeah, you have all the collectibles to collect in each level. You have 10 Jiggies, 100 notes, 5 Jinjos. You also have like the honeycomb pieces. But the point of that is that they give you enough stuff to do in every level. And so far, it's taken me about 6 hours to 100% the first 3 levels. And that's with me being like semi a blind playthrough, like where I've seen Kevin play it and Kevin's also giving me hints. But if I was going in totally blind, then that would take me longer to like extend the life of the game. And also the later levels will take longer anyway because they're more difficult, right? yeah, like the game, I agree. I don't know if I would call it concise necessarily, but it's focused.
Yeah.
And that's in that way where, it does what it sets out to do. And that's kind of it. Kind of like Tony Hawk in that regard, really, just a different genre of game.
Yeah. And I guess I say concise. I'm comparing it to its successor, Banjo-Tooie. It's definitely more concise than Banjo-Tooie. Banjo-Tooie seems to kind of go off on a whole tangent and kind of it's a can of worms for sure. It's still a fun game, and I love all the things that it brought to the table and all the innovations that it even brought. But I guess I say it's concise because I compare it to that game. And from a newbie perspective, I don't remember what that's like. I just don't anymore. I've played the game so many times through, and it feels so concise to me because it's like, okay, you go here, you do this, you do that, boom.
Yeah.
And you go per level basis, like it's very linear. And so, yeah, I don't know. I do have one critique, actually, and it's about freaking Furnace Fun. That stupid segment. Okay, so that segment had I mean, it is kind of goofy like the rest of the game, and it kind of fits in that aspect, but it's just, it really kills the momentum of the game, especially when you don't have the calculator us speedrunners use and the glitch we use to get through it. If you're just playing through it, it's so random and tedious to really figure out all the answers to, and you can end up dying multiple times and could probably end up having most people quit the game and never come back right before Grunty, because it's just that frustrating. Even if you complete, which I guess this might be a treat for people who complete Furnace Fun and the hell that it is. It's literally looks like it's in hell. But there is a 6-minute long, and for speedrunners this sucks, but there's a 6-minute long like cutscene where everybody thinks they've won the game and they saved the day, but they're like, oh wait, no, you need to go beat Grunty. And he's like, oh yeah. So then he goes back and you got to go back and beat Grunty. So really it's just one large big waste of time that kills the complete momentum of the game. I know Rare likes their mini games and like their things like that, but man, that's one I could have done without. I feel like they should have done some play testing on that because that was awful. So that's my biggest critique on the content.
Do you want to explain to the people back home what exactly Furnace Fun is?
Right, so Furnace Fun is it's like a game show that Grunty, the main boss, kind of puts on for you. And you have these tiles that you move around like Monopoly. You can only go one tile at a time, and each tile is something different. It either asks you a certain question about a picture from the game or a certain fact about Grunty, or there's even a death square where if you land on this square and you get the question wrong, you die. So that's cool. And if you get the question wrong normally, you lose a health. If you don't know what to do when it comes to Furnace Fun, my condolences. You're supposed to talk to Grunty's sister, Brentilda, who gives you the answers to some of these, but then you have to memorize these answers. Like I said, it disrupts the whole pace of the game because this is not glaringly obvious when you're going throughout the game playing it. So, yeah, you have to go back and kind of figure out the answers to some of these riddles. It's doable on your first playthrough, but unlikely. You're likely to get very frustrated and not want to play again. At least that's me. But I guess it does feel kind of rewarding when you're done with it. But yeah, I think that hurts the game, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's something that unfortunately I don't have the personal experience to really like have that affect my rating one way or the other. But it certainly sounds like a pretty shitty time, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I've seen you. Yeah. I mean, I've seen you only do it the speedrunning way, which does seem frustrating, but also somehow more tolerable than the way you're supposed to do it based on the way that you just described it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally forgotten about that. I'm kind of wondering if I want to like lower my rating just a little bit for that.
Wow. It was such a harsh review that I made you lower your rating.
But I think I'll leave it for the sake of being integritous to the people and to my own experience.
Yeah,
whatever.
True.
I don't feel like changing my rating. That's what I'm trying to say. But
no, I agree with you. I don't think you should either. I mean, it's bad, but I don't think it speaks to the game as a whole. However, it's just, it's stupid.
It's more like one just gross misstep that they made in an otherwise amazing game.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, to kind of close out my content, the charm of this game is amazing. The characters are amazing. There's just, this is going to sound really weird, but especially through speedrunning, I've developed sort of a bond with these characters, given their charm and how unique each of them are. So, like, I get to Boggy, I'm like, yo, what's up, Boggy? Or Vile, I'm like, freaking Vile. You know, like, you get to each of these sections and you're like, you have a different emotion when it comes to them. And I think that really speaks to the game's personality. I really like the way they made the content in this game, and I think it's pretty stellar, with the exception of Furnace Fun. Amazing job, Rare. As a whole, I think just awesome. And you were right in that they were working on 2-player mode for this game, but it's interesting. When you 100% the game and you beat Grunty, she tosses this bit of magic at you at the end, and it's supposed to unlock the 2-player mode, and you go back through and beat the game in 2-player mode. But they just took out the 2-player mode, but I don't think they took out that extra bit at the end where she kind of alludes to an extra game mode, but she doesn't specify. So it's never really clear what she's talking about at the end. But most people just assume it's the sequel.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said about the characters being so memorable, because that is something I wrote down, and I don't think I got to say it myself yet. But of course, some of the main characters are very memorable. I think Grunty is probably the most memorable character in the whole game. I mean, partly because she speaks in rhyme the entire time.
Wow, you just did that.
But hell yeah. But also Kazooie. Kazooie's, got a big mouth on her, but she's pretty cool. Even Bottles. I like Bottles a lot. Just something about him. I feel like I relate to him on a deep and personal level somehow. But even the minor characters and some of the level-specific characters like Clanker and you said Boggy. I really like Boggy too, just from watching you kick his ass in sled races. But yeah, like, sometimes I get a little annoyed, like, oh, how come when I collect an egg for the first time, it has to show up and be like, I'm an egg, you can collect me to shoot, because, like, whatever. Like, sometimes I feel like that gets a little annoying, but on the whole, I really do like the way that they just made the game, like, positively bleed character everywhere, like, it's just,
yeah,
it's just great.
I agree with you, man.
And I imagine that I'd only get a stronger bond with it the more that I played it.
Yeah. It's a weird feeling when you speedrun it, when you want to be mad, but at the same time, these characters are like, what's up, Banjo? Yeah.
Got a second for me to tell you my life story?
No, skip text.
Well, that's it for me.
That's it for me. All right. So do you want to give your rating first?
90.
Oh, that's it?
Yes, it's a 90.
Oh, a 90. I thought you were going to be like 93 or something like that.
Oh, no.
You kept me in anticipation. Well, mine is a 96.
Damn, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So averaging all of my scores together, that's going to be 94 with a 97.5 with a 96. So for gameplay, aesthetics, and content respectively, my overall score is a 95.833, which rounds up to a 96.
Impressive, Star Fox.
Yes.
So my ratings, I have an 85 for gameplay, a 90 for visuals, 95 for audio. Those combined into a 92.5 for aesthetics. And then a 90 for content. So the three relevant scores are 85, 92.5, and 90, which when I average those, I get a fat, fresh 89.1666666, which rounds up to an 89.2.
Okay, I see. So your overall is 89.2?
My overall final last score is 89.2.
Okay, cool. So our IG rating is a 92.5 for this game. I'm pretty satisfied with that.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. I'm very satisfied with the 92.5. And yeah, that does it for our review of Banjo-Kazooie.
Yep. I really enjoyed these meat and potatoes.
Yeah. Well, I also have a very exciting mix-up to bring to this podcast.
Oh, shit.
Episode. We will not be doing, this may be some of your guys' favorite section, but I thought I'd switch it up this time, and instead of a quick attack section, and Peter's not ready for this because I didn't tell him what it was, we're actually going to do a Nintendo video game trivia
Ooh, wow.
section.
I like this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a little mix-up, and I think our viewers at home would like to listen along and see if they can get the answers right. So basically, yeah, simple format. I ask you a question. I list the possible answers that it could be, and you pick one. So it's something we can easily go through. But I thought it'd be interesting, and people would be like, "Oh, no, you idiot. Why didn't you pick this one?" Yeah, kind of thing.
If anyone calls me an idiot, you're banned from the podcast.
Yeah, you can't listen anymore. Peter will make it to where, like, the frequency can't be read by your ears only. Anyway, this first one's kind of easy, I'm going to have to say. I got it from Nintendo's website itself, but it's a good one to start off with to kind of see how the format's going to go. So you ready?
Hell yeah.
All right, let's do this. Where did the fairy Navi from Ocarina of Time get her name?
A real puzzler. What are the
Navigate,
options?
Novel, Navy, or North American Vampire Incorporated?
I think definitely the first one. Oh, I actually meant to say the fourth one, -3, to bring us back to the first one.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Navigate, yeah. So that was a question I got from Nintendo's website itself, and I said, wow, these are way too easy. I'm going somewhere else. But I thought that was funny because it had North American Vampire Incorporated, so I thought I'd put that one in there. But cool. Good first question to start it out, but now it gets tougher. Which of the following games did Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto not design? Donkey Kong, Kid Icarus, Excitebike, or The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time?
Which Donkey Kong are we talking about?
It just says Donkey Kong.
Well, oh, man. I actually don't know. I'm going to say Kid Icarus.
Dude, you got it right.
Yay. Yeah, because I think Sakurai designed that game, right?
Yeah. Anyway, on to the next question. What is the first game with Princess Zelda as a playable character? Zelda Wand of Gamelon? Link to the Past? Super Smash Bros. Melee? Or Zelda 2?
Pretty sure. I'm going to be mad if I get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Melee.
Oh, and it's actually Zelda Wand of Gamelon. I just wonder what Ganon's up to.
I just wonder why Zelda's playable.
Yeah, close, man, close.
I didn't even know that they were like playable characters in that game. I thought it was kind of like a choose your own adventure sort of deal.
No, it was, yeah, I guess there was. Apparently Zelda's a playable character, but
that game doesn't count. Like literally, it's not in the Zelda canon. It's not like in Hyrule Historia or anything.
You're not wrong, but
damn it.
So they had, as these choices, they had Super Smash Bros. Melee and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but us being Smash players, I was like, well, he's obviously not going to choose one of those, which would be Brawl. So I put Zelda 2 in there.
Oh, interesting.
I kind of threw you off there. All right, so on to the next one.
I fucking knew it was going to be Gamelon.
I said that wrong, didn't I? Gamelon. Whatever. Chameleon. Anyway, what is the best-selling Nintendo handheld console of all time? The Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo DS, or the Nintendo 3DS?
Ooh, oh my god, I actually don't know. I'm gonna say the Game Boy, period.
Final answer?
Yes.
You're wrong. It's the Nintendo DS. By the way, I was doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire right there. I don't know if anybody knew.
I caught that. Don't worry. I thought it might be the NDS because I know that that the Wii, I think, has been their best-selling console to date. And so I thought it might be kind of like something piggybacking on that, if that makes any sense.
Right.
But damn.
Yeah. It's weird. Anyway, so our final question. So this is a good one. It says, which Nintendo 64 game caused enough injuries in children to result in a $80 million settlement? So the first suggestion, you're going to like this, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Super Smash Bros., Mario Kart 64, or Mario Party.
A game that caused enough injuries?
Mm-hmm. And children to result in an $80 million settlement.
See, before you said the question, or before you said the choices, I thought this was going in like seizures direction, like that one Pokemon episode. I wasn't expecting it to be like bad influences or anything like that, because that's what it's getting at, right? Like, oh, my kid played Smash Brothers and now he hits everyone. Like, I guess that's what it's getting at here.
Right. It's just injuries in general. I forgot the specifics of what specific injuries they were, but it just basically which game caused an $80 million lawsuit because of injuries to children.
I really have no idea, but I'm going to say Mario Kart 64.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
It's Mario Party.
Aww.
I don't know how. I should have actually looked up how. I need to do a better job of that in the next time I potentially do this segment. But yeah, apparently Mario Party caused a bunch of injuries to children to result in an $80 million settlement for Nintendo. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, I guess it had to be from kids getting in arguments or something, right?
Right. Throwing controllers or maybe even like mashing it. There might be in a mini game that was ridiculous or something. I don't know. For our fact checkers out there, please let us know.
Yeah. We haven't called on you enough this episode, so earn your keep now, please.
Well, that does it for our news segment that we got going here. I hope you enjoyed that one.
I did. Was it inspired by Furnace Fun?
No, it just, I said, I got to look up these new news. I hate saying that, but, and I couldn't really find anything that was new. Like a lot of video game news is like up and coming, or it takes a long time to kind of, come up. So I was just like, you know what? I could just do trivia and that might be pretty cool. And people might want to hear, you'd be like, oh no, it's this one. And as they're listening along. So I don't know, but yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It just needs a cool name though. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I couldn't think of one before we did this, but tweet at us if you have a suggested name for this segment, or I'll eventually come up with one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, cool. That was a blast and a half, I will say.
And a half. I think we're at the end of the episode, man, and we're cutting it quite early today.
This is about average, I would say. You say 2 hours, but usually it's like an hour and a half or so. But right. Yeah, that's wrapping it up for us. I guess we have our usual plugs to do. I will do the honors, at least to start with. Social media, we have it. Go find it.
Yeah.
On Twitter, we are the IG_cast. Rather, I will say Kevin is the IG_cast. Kevin, if you want to like tweet at Grant Kirkhope, see if we can get him to guest on the show. I mean, I could call him, obviously, but I feel like Twitter is kind of a more, transparent way of going about these things.
Right, naturally.
Yeah. Email us at theinterstategamers@gmail.com. The Interstate Gamers is also our Facebook page. You can listen to us on Spotify. You can listen to us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. I've actually had a couple people interested in listening via YouTube, which I wasn't really expecting, but apparently that's something that has some sort of demand somewhere. If you want us to be on YouTube, tell us, and the more people that tell us, the more likely we are to take all the time out of our days to go do that. So, let us know what you want, because everything we do is for the people.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. I think that's a good little closeout. I got nothing. did you mention our ratings?
Not besides sneaking it into the podcast itself.
Okay, yeah, definitely go check out our ratings for each game. We're at our 9th game now, which we didn't mention where this ranks. So let's go do that. So tiny URL, I'm going to type this in as I say it, .com/IG ratings. So it looks like Banjo will place, just under Star Fox 64, which is ranked 3rd out of our overall games. So 3 of 9, not too bad.
What's ranked above Star Fox 64?
Super Mario World.
Oh, yeah.
You gave that a perfect 100. So it's kind of hard to beat that.
Yeah, back in the less fine days.
Yeah. Definitely go check out our ratings there, and you can see the specific breakdown of everything. It's really nifty.
Yeah. Once again, I want to plug our homeboy, our good buddy, ZLink093, aka ZLink Gaming, aka Chris, who really is putting in a lot of work to his YouTube channel and his streams, especially the YouTube channel. As of late, he's been doing some good stuff. If you want a relaxing Let's Play to listen to, or a relaxing stream to watch, he's definitely your guy, so go ahead and give him a look if you're interested.
Cool. Well, I think that about does it for us, Peter.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
All right, well, I guess we'll sign off then.
How do I end this?
I don't know, just tell them we're leaving. Just leave.
Bye.
All right, see you later, guys.